Martins had always loved quiet neighborhoods. After moving into his small apartment on Willow Street, he thought he had finally found the peace he'd been craving. The street was lined with tall maples, the kind that whispered when the wind passed through them. At night, the whole block seemed to sleep early. But lately, Martins felt the opposite of peace. It started with footsteps, always behind him. At first, he brushed it off, maybe another late walker or a neighbor heading home, but the sound was too steady, too precise, and always stopped the moment he turned around. One chilly October night, Martins was walking back from the grocery store. The air smelled of damp leaves. He heard the footsteps again. He spun around, heart pounding. Nothing, just empty sidewalks. But when he reached his apartment door, he noticed it, the faint reflection in the glass window of his porch. A man-shaped shadow, standing perfectly still across the street. The next morning, Martins told his friend Angelica. She lived a few blocks away and often checked in on him. Angelica laughed nervously. "Martins, maybe you're just stressed. New place, new city, your mind's playing tricks." But that same night, Angelica got a text from him at 2:07 a.m. "Someone's outside my window. He's just standing there. What do I do?" She called him immediately, but the phone rang and rang before Martins finally picked up. His voice was shaking. "He's gone now, but I swear, Angie, he was watching me. Just watching." Angelica decided to visit the next day. When she arrived, Martins looked pale, like he hadn't slept. She convinced him to report it, and they went to the police station. The officer on duty, Timothy, listened carefully, but his expression gave away his doubt. "Look," Timothy said, tapping his pen. "Unless this guy threatened you, there's not much we can do. People stand on sidewalks all the time." Martins clenched his fists. "You don't get it. He's not random. He's following me." That night, Angelica stayed over. Around midnight, they heard it. Footsteps circling the building. Slow. Measured. Martins froze, holding his breath. Angelica grabbed her phone, but when she peeked through the curtain, she dropped it. A tall figure stood in the yard, face hidden under a hood, completely motionless. Angelica whispered, "Oh my God, he's real." They called Timothy directly. By the time he arrived, the yard was empty. The officer searched but found no trace. He gave Martins a wary look, like he wasn't sure whether to believe him. But the nightmare didn't stop. The stalker began leaving signs. A photo of Martins slipped under his door. The scent of cigarette smoke in his hallway, though Martins didn't smoke. A single black glove left on his porch one morning. Angelica insisted Martins stay at her place for a while. For 2 days, it was calm. But then, the texts started, from an unknown number. "You can't hide. I see you when you sleep. She can't save you." The final message was a photo. It showed Martins asleep on Angelica's couch. They called Timothy again. This time he took it seriously. He promised patrol cars in the area, told them to keep the doors locked. But 2 nights later, everything spiraled. Angelica woke to the sound of her back door creaking open. She grabbed a bat from under her bed and whispered Martins' name, but he was already awake, eyes wide with terror. The door clicked shut, then silence. Timothy arrived within minutes after their frantic call. He searched the backyard and found footprints in the mud, large, heavy prints circling the house again and again. The officer returned, face grim. "This guy isn't random. He knows where you live, where you sleep. He's not just watching, he's planning something." That night, they all stayed in the living room, lights on, waiting for morning. At 3 a.m., the sound of fingernails scratching against the window filled the room. Martins whispered, "He's here." Angelica clutched the bat. Timothy drew his gun and stepped closer to the glass. But when he yanked the curtain aside, no one was there. Just long, jagged scratches carved into the glass. They never saw the stalker's face. Not that night, not the next. But Martins knew one thing. He wasn't going to stop. He wasn't after money. He wasn't even after violence. He wanted something worse. Control, fear. And every night, as Martins lay awake, he swore he could hear it again. The slow, deliberate footsteps circling in the dark. My name is Angelica, and I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who had to look over her shoulder every time she left her apartment. But here I am, 28 years old, living in a city that never sleeps, and suddenly feeling like the walls are closing in. It started small, a text message from an unknown number. "You look nice today." I laughed it off, probably a wrong number. But then I noticed the timing. I'd just come back from the grocery store. My hair was in a messy bun, my gray hoodie zipped up. No one had said anything to me on the street, yet the text knew. My stomach knotted. For days I tried to ignore it. I told myself it had to be my ex. Martins. He'd never taken the breakup well. He was possessive, controlling, the kind of guy who kept tabs on where I was even when we were together. It wouldn't surprise me if he found some new way to track me. The messages kept coming. Why don't you smile more? Red suits you. I miss the way you sleep. That one chilled me. Whoever it was, they weren't guessing. They'd seen me. I finally called Martins. His voice was groggy, annoyed. Jesus, Angelica, you still think I'm hung up on you? I moved on. Stop calling me. He hung up before I could explain. For a second, I wanted to believe him. But then came the phone call. I was brushing my teeth one night when my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to confront him. Martins, this isn't funny, I said. Silence. Then, a slow exhale, the sound of someone breathing into the phone. I slammed it down so hard it cracked my screen protector. My chest tightened. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told my friend Timothy from work. He was always the protective type, older brother energy. He frowned deeply. Angelica, this isn't something to mess with. You need to report it. I shook my head. And tell them what? That a guy texted me creepy stuff? They'll just roll their eyes. But later that night, I realized Timothy was right. I came home from a late shift. The hallway outside my apartment smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. I don't smoke, and neither does anyone on my floor. When I slid my key into the lock, I noticed it. The door frame had fresh scratches, as if someone had been tampering with it. I went inside, locked every bolt, and grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the couch. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A picture message. It was me, sitting on my couch earlier that evening, scrolling my phone, taken from outside my own window. I screamed. I called 911, voice shaking so hard I could barely speak. When the officers arrived, they searched the building but found nothing. One of them, Officer Timothy, same name as my friend, looked at me with pity. Ma'am, stalker cases can be difficult unless we catch them in the act. Just be careful. Document everything. That night, I barely blinked. I kept the lights on, jumping at every creak. By the next week, I was unraveling. I stopped walking home alone. I stopped opening my blinds. But the messages got bolder. Why don't you wave? I'm right here. You smell like vanilla tonight. Timothy can't protect you. That one made my blood run cold. Whoever this was, they knew who I talked to, where I went, who I trusted. I started thinking I was losing my mind. Maybe it was Martins. Maybe he lied. Maybe he wanted me terrified. But then came the night that proved me wrong. I was leaving work, the parking lot half empty, when I heard it. Footsteps, crisp, heavy, echoing behind me. I turned sharply. A man in a hoodie stood under a flickering light. Too tall, too broad to be Martins. He didn't move, just stood there, face hidden. "Who are you?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer. I sprinted to my car, locked the doors, and peeled out of the lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. The text came seconds later. "Cute car. Drive safe." That was the moment the denial broke. It wasn't Martins. It wasn't anyone I knew. It was worse, a stranger. I went to stay with my co-worker Timothy after that. His apartment had better security, and he wasn't about to let me go through this alone. But even then, I couldn't escape it. At 3 a.m., we both woke to the sound of scratching on his window. We froze, listening. Then, a shadow passed by the blinds. Timothy grabbed a kitchen knife, but by the time he threw the window open, the street below was empty. The next day, a note was slipped under his door. "You can run, Angie, but I'll always find you." I don't know what's worse, the fact that he watches me or the fact that no one can stop him. The police say they'll look into it. Timothy tells me to stay strong. Martin still thinks I'm crazy. And me? I don't sleep anymore. I keep the lights on, my bat by the bed, and I whisper to myself over and over, "It's just paranoia. He's not here." But deep down, I know he is. Somewhere in the shadows, behind every corner, waiting.